I've always been the type to play it safe, you know? Savannah Baker, producer at WRL-TV in Raleigh. Sounds impressive, right? Well, let me tell you, it's about as exciting as watching paint dry. Day in, day out, same old stories, same old faces. I was suffocating in a sea of mediocrity, drowning in the mundane. So, there I was, scrolling through my phone during yet another mind-numbing meeting, when an ad caught my eye. "Challenge yourself at Triangle Rock Club," it screamed. Gosh, why not? Anything to break this soul-crushing routine. The next evening, I found myself staring up at a wall of colorful holds, wondering what the hell I'd gotten myself into. The place smelled of chalk and sweat, filled with lean, muscular bodies that made me feel like a blob of pudding in comparison. But hey, I was here. Might as well give it a shot. As I fumbled with the harness, trying to figure out which end was up, I heard a frustrated grunt nearby. Glancing over, I saw her. Blonde hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, determination etched on her face as she reached for a hold just beyond her grasp. She was breathtaking, even with her brow furrowed in concentration. I watched as she made another attempt, her muscles flexing as she pushed herself upward. For a moment it seemed like she'd make it, but then her fingers slipped and she fell back, caught by the rope with a soft jerk. "Damn it," she muttered, her blue eyes flashing with frustration. Before I knew what I was doing, I was walking over to her. "Hey," I said, my voice sounding oddly husky. "You're almost there. Want some tips?" She turned to me, surprise replacing the annoyance on her face. "You climb?" she asked, eyeing my less-than-athletic frame skeptically. I laughed, feeling a warmth spread through me at the sound of her voice. "God, no. I'm a total newbie. But I've been watching you, and I think I see where you're going wrong." She raised an eyebrow, a small smile tugging at the corners of her mouth. "Oh yeah? Please enlighten me." I pointed to a hold slightly to her left. "If you use that one instead of reaching straight up, you might be able to get more leverage." She looked at where I was pointing, then back at me. "Huh, you might be onto something there." She stuck out her hand. "I'm Heather. Heather Cook." I took her hand, feeling a jolt as our skin touched. "Savannah Baker. Nice to meet you, Heather." As she turned back to the wall, I couldn't help but admire the way her tank top clung to her curves. She took a deep breath, then started climbing again. This time she followed my suggestion, and with a final push she reached the top. "Yes!" she exclaimed, pumping her fist in the air. As she was lowered back down, her eyes locked with mine, and my breath caught in my throat. "Thanks for the tip, Savannah. How about I return the favor and give you some pointers?" I nodded, suddenly eager to make a fool of myself if it meant spending more time with her. As we moved to an easier route, Heather's hand on my back guiding me, I realized that for the first time in years, I felt truly alive. Little did I know, this was just the beginning of a journey that would turn my world upside down. Over the next few weeks, Heather and I fell into a routine. We'd meet at the climbing gym, fumble our way up the walls, and then grab a beer at the little bar next door. It was during one of these post-climb sessions that I noticed something was off. Heather was quieter than usual, her eyes distant as she nursed her drink. "Hey," I said, nudging her gently. Earth to Heather. "What's going on in that head of yours?" She sighed, running a hand through her blonde hair. "It's my sister," she finally admitted. "She needs surgery. It's not looking good, Savannah." My heart clenched. In the short time I'd known her, I'd learned that Heather was fiercely protective of her family. "Gosh, I'm so sorry. Is there anything I can do?" She shook her head, a bitter smile on her face. "Unless you've got a spare 50 grand lying around, I don't think so." I whistled low. "That's a lot of cash. Insurance won't cover it?" "Nope. It's an experimental treatment. Our last hope, really." She took a long swig of her beer. "I've been trying to figure out how to raise the money, but..." An idea struck me. "What about streaming? You've got a great personality, and with your looks, you'd probably attract a following pretty quickly." Heather's eyebrows shot up. "Streaming? Like video games and stuff?" I nodded, warming to the idea. "Yeah, or just chatting, doing challenges. People love that kind of content. And if we play our cards right, we could monetize it pretty quickly." "We?" Heather asked, a spark of interest in her eyes. "Well, yeah," I said, feeling a blush creep up my neck. "I am a producer, after all. I could help you set everything up, figure out the best content strategy." For the first time that night, Heather's face lit up with a genuine smile. "You do that for me?" I reached out, squeezing her hand without thinking. Of course. That's what friends are for, right? The word friends felt oddly inadequate, but I pushed that thought aside. This was about helping Heather and her sister, not my confusing feelings. We spent the rest of the evening brainstorming ideas, the energy between us electric. As the bar began to empty, Heather suggested we head back to her place to start planning in earnest. Her apartment was small but cozy, filled with climbing posters and photos of her family. As we sat on her worn couch, laptops open and ideas flowing, I couldn't help but feel drawn to her. The way her eyes lit up when she got excited, the little crease between her brows when she concentrated, it was all impossibly endearing. Hours passed in a blur of creative energy. We decided on a fitness and lifestyle channel, playing to Heather's strengths as a climber and her natural charisma. I showed her the basics of lighting and camera angles, and we even filmed a quick test video. It was well past midnight when we finally called it quits. As I stood to leave, Heather caught my hand. "Savannah," she said softly, her blue eyes intense. "Thank you. I don't know what I'd do without you." I swallowed hard, acutely aware of how close we were standing. "It's nothing," I managed to say. "I'm happy to help." For a moment, I thought she might kiss me. The air between us felt charged, heavy with unspoken words. But then she pulled me into a tight hug instead, and I let myself melt into her embrace. As I drove home that night, my mind was racing. I'd gone from a boring, predictable life to, whatever this was, helping a woman I'd just met launch a streaming career to save her sister's life. And if I was being honest with myself, falling head over heels in the process. What had started as a simple climb was turning into the greatest adventure of my life. And as terrifying as it was, I couldn't wait to see where it would lead us next. I've got to hand it to Heather. When she commits to something, she goes all in. Over the next few weeks, her streaming channel took off like a rocket. We started with simple workout routines and climbing tips, but it was Heather's magnetic personality that really drew people in. Her laugh, her wit, the way she'd scrunch up her nose when concentrating, viewers couldn't get enough. As her producer and biggest fan, I was there for every stream, working behind the scenes to make sure everything ran smoothly. But as the follower count grew, so did a nagging feeling in the pit of my stomach, jealousy. It was ugly and irrational, but I couldn't shake it. "Savannah, look!" Heather squealed one evening, bouncing on her toes as she stared at her phone. "We just hit followers." I plastered on a smile, trying to ignore the twinge in my chest as I watched her scroll through the flood of congratulatory messages. "That's amazing, Heather. You've worked hard for this." She looked up at me, her blue eyes sparkling. "We've worked hard for this. I couldn't have done any of it without you." Before I could respond, her phone pinged again. "Oh my gosh, DreamClimb just donated. They want me to do a sponsored stream next week." As Heather danced around the room in excitement, I felt my smile falter. It was ridiculous to feel this way. I should be thrilled for her success. This was all for her sister after all. But watching her interact with her devoted fans, seeing the adoration in their comments, it was getting harder to ignore the growing ache in my heart. The sponsored stream was a huge success. Heather was in her element, demonstrating new climbing techniques and bantering with viewers. I watched from behind the camera, my chest tight as she laughed at a particularly flirtatious comment. "All right, everyone," Heather said as the stream wound down. "Before we go, I've got a surprise. We're so close to our goal for my sister's surgery. To give us that final push, I'm going to do a hour climbing challenge stream next week." The chat exploded with excitement. I, on the other hand, felt my stomach drop. "Heather," I hissed as soon as the camera was off. "A hour stream? Are you crazy?" She turned to me, her face flushed with excitement. "It'll be fine, Savannah. Think of how much we could raise." "But it's dangerous," I argued. "You could hurt yourself, or—" "I can handle it," she cut me off, her tone leaving no room for argument. "This is for my sister. I'd do anything for her." I bit my tongue, knowing I was fighting a losing battle. Instead, I threw myself into preparing for the marathon stream. We set up multiple cameras at the climbing gym, arranged for guest appearances, and planned out a rough schedule. The night before the big event, Heather and I were at her apartment, going over last-minute details. The air between us felt charged, a mix of anticipation and something deeper that neither of us was ready to acknowledge. "We should get some sleep," I said finally, glancing at the clock. "Big day tomorrow." Heather nodded, but made no move to get up from the couch where we were sitting. Instead, she turned to face me, her expression suddenly serious. Savannah, I just want you to know how much I appreciate everything you've done. You've changed my life. My heart raced as she leaned in closer. Was this really happening? After weeks of longing glances and lingering touches, were we finally going to cross that line? Before I could overthink it, I closed the distance between us. Our lips met, and the world fell away. It was soft and tentative at first, but quickly deepened into something more urgent, more desperate. My hands found their way into her hair as she pulled me closer, a small moan escaping her throat. When we finally broke apart, we were both breathless. Heather's eyes were wide, her lips slightly swollen. Wow, she whispered. Yeah, I agreed, feeling dazed. Wow. We stared at each other for a long moment, the air thick with unspoken words. Then, as if on cue, both of our phones buzzed. Reality came crashing back in. We should really get some sleep, Heather said softly, though she made no move to let go of my hand. I nodded, trying to ignore the way my heart was still racing. You're right, big day tomorrow. As I drove home that night, my mind was a whirlwind of emotions. Excitement for the stream, worry for Heather's safety, and beneath it all, a giddy joy at the memory of our kiss. Whatever happened tomorrow, I knew one thing for certain: nothing would ever be the same again. The hour stream was a whirlwind of chalk dust, energy drinks, and adrenaline. Heather was a force of nature, tackling route after route with seemingly boundless enthusiasm. I stayed behind the scenes, managing the technical aspects and trying not to let my worry show on camera during the brief moments I appeared. As the hours ticked by, donations poured in. We were so close to the goal for Heather's sister's surgery, I could practically taste it. But as we entered the final stretch, I could see the fatigue setting in. Heather's movements were becoming slower, less precise. I watched with my heart in my throat as she wobbled on a particularly tricky hold. Maybe we should call it, I murmured into her earpiece during a water break. You've done amazing and we're so close to the goal. No way, she panted back, her eyes fierce despite the exhaustion. We're seeing this through. I bit my lip, knowing there was no talking her out of it. As Heather prepared for her final climb, a notification popped up on my screen. A meet and greet had been scheduled for next week with the top donors. I made a mental note to discuss it with Heather later. Right now, all my focus was on getting her through these last few hours safely. By some miracle, we made it. As the clock hit the hour mark, Heather was at the top of the wall, tears streaming down her face as she realized we'd not only met but exceeded our goal. The chat was exploding with congratulations and heart emojis. I was so caught up in the moment that I didn't notice the new message notification until later. It was from Sarah Hernandez, our top donor throughout the stream. She wanted to meet Heather privately before the official meet and greet. Something about the tone of the message set me on edge, but I pushed the feeling aside. We had bigger things to focus on. The days following the stream were a blur of media interviews and thank you messages. Heather was riding high on the success, but I could see the toll the marathon session had taken on her. She was more subdued than usual, her smiles not quite reaching her eyes. We hadn't talked about the kiss. Every time I tried to bring it up, something would interrupt. A phone call, a sponsor email, another crisis with her sister's medical bills. The longer we went without addressing it, the more awkward it became. Finally, the day of the meet and greet arrived. Heather was a bundle of nerves, pacing back and forth in the green room of the event space we'd rented. What if they don't like me in person? She fretted, running her hands through her hair for the 100th time. What if I say something stupid? I caught her hands, forcing her to stand still. Hey, look at me. You're going to be great. They already love you, remember? Our eyes met, and for a moment, I thought we might finally address the elephant in the room. But then there was a knock at the door. 5 minutes, Miss Cook. Heather squeezed my hands, then let go. Thanks, Savannah. I don't know what I'd do without you. The meet and greet started off well. Fans were thrilled to meet Heather in person, gushing over her climbing skills and asking for selfies. I hung back, watching with a mixture of pride and that now familiar twinge of jealousy. Then Sarah Hernandez arrived. She was stunning, tall, with long dark hair and piercing brown eyes. I watched as she made her way directly to Heather, ignoring everyone else in the room. Heather, she said, her voice low and intense. I've been waiting so long to meet you in person." I couldn't hear Heather's response over the buzz of the crowd, but I saw the way her face lit up as she talked to Sarah. They fell into an animated conversation, laughing and leaning in close to hear each other over the noise. As I watched them, a sick feeling grew in my stomach. This wasn't just fan admiration, there was something more there, something that made my chest ache. I was so caught up in my own thoughts that I almost missed it when Sarah took Heather's hand, pulling her slightly away from the crowd. "Heather," I heard her say, her voice carrying in a momentary lull in the noise. "I know this might sound crazy, but I think I'm in love with you." The room seemed to freeze. Heather's eyes went wide, her mouth opening and closing wordlessly. I stood rooted to the spot, unable to move or speak. In that moment, as I watched Heather struggle to respond to Sarah's declaration, all the complications of our situation came crashing down. The unspoken feelings between Heather and me, the pressure of her sister's medical needs, the demands of her newfound fame, it all swirled together in a dizzying maelstrom. I wanted to run over there, to pull Heather away and demand we finally talk about what was happening between us. But I couldn't move. All I could do was watch as Heather fumbled for words, her eyes darting around the room until they landed on me. The look we shared in that moment was filled with confusion, fear, and something that might have been longing. But before either of us could act, Sarah was speaking again, her words lost to me in the sudden roaring in my ears. As the meet and greet continued around us, I realized that whatever was developing between Heather and me, it was far more complicated than I'd ever imagined. And I had no idea how we were going to navigate the stormy waters ahead. The days following the meet and greet were tense, to say the least. Heather and I danced around each other, both of us clearly wanting to talk about what had happened, but neither brave enough to broach the subject. Sarah's declaration of love hung between us like a storm cloud, dark and ominous. I threw myself into work, focusing on editing videos and managing Heather's rapidly growing social media presence. It was easier to lose myself in analytics and engagement rates than to confront the mess of emotions churning inside me. One evening, as I was hunched over my laptop in Heather's living room, she finally broke the silence. "Savannah," she said softly, "we need to talk about what happened at the meet and greet." I looked up, my heart racing. "Okay," I managed, trying to keep my voice steady. "Let's talk." Heather sat down next to me, close enough that I could smell her shampoo. I don't know what to do," she confessed. "Sarah's been messaging me nonstop. She wants to meet up to explore our connection." She made air quotes with her fingers, her expression a mix of confusion and something else I couldn't quite read. "And what do you want?" I asked, hating how small my voice sounded. She turned to me, her blue eyes intense. "I don't know, Savannah. I'm so confused. There's Sarah, and then there's us." She gestured between us. "Whatever this is." I opened my mouth to respond, to finally put words to the feelings that had been building for weeks, when suddenly Heather's phone rang. It was her mother. The color drained from Heather's face as she listened. "What? When?" she gasped. "Okay, I'm on my way." She hung up and turned to me, her eyes filled with tears. "It's my sister. She's taken a turn for the worse. They're rushing her into emergency surgery." All thoughts of our complicated relationship vanished. "I'll drive you," I said immediately, already reaching for my keys. The drive to the hospital was tense and silent. Heather stared out the window, her hand clutching mine so tightly it almost hurt. I didn't mind. I'd bear any pain if it meant being there for her. Hours passed in a blur of harsh fluorescent lights and the antiseptic smell of hospital corridors. Heather paced relentlessly, alternating between angry outbursts and quiet sobs. I did my best to comfort her, all the while feeling utterly helpless. It was nearly dawn when the doctor finally emerged from the operating room. "She's stable," he announced, and I felt Heather sag against me in relief. "But she's not out of the woods yet. The next hours will be critical." As we stumbled out of the hospital, exhausted and emotionally drained, Heather turned to me. "I can't go home," she said, her voice hoarse. "I can't be alone right now." "You don't have to be," I assured her, leading her to my car. "You can stay with me." Back at my apartment, Heather collapsed onto my couch, looking smaller and more vulnerable than I'd ever seen her. I brought her a blanket and a cup of tea, then sat down beside her, unsure of what to say or do. "I'm scared, Savannah," she whispered, her eyes brimming with fresh tears. "What if? What if we did all this for nothing? What if she doesn't make it? I pulled her into my arms, holding her as she cried. She's going to be okay, I murmured, wishing I could promise it with certainty. She's strong, just like you. As Heather's sobs subsided, she looked up at me, her face just inches from mine. The air between us crackled with tension. For a moment, I thought she might kiss me again. But then her phone buzzed, shattering the moment. It was a notification from her streaming platform. Someone had uploaded a video titled "Climbing Queen's Secret Lesbian Affair." My stomach dropped as I watched Heather open it with shaking hands. The video was grainy but unmistakable. It showed us at the climbing gym, sharing that first kiss after her marathon stream. Comments were already pouring in, a mix of support, shock, and unfortunately, some hate. Oh gosh, Heather breathed, her face pale. This is going to ruin everything. The sponsors, the fan base we've built. I felt a wave of guilt wash over me. If I hadn't kissed her that night, if I'd been more careful. I'm so sorry, Heather. This is all my fault. She shook her head, her expression unreadable. No, it's not. It's both of us. But what are we going to do? As if on cue, her phone started ringing. It was Sarah. Heather stared at the screen, then at me, her eyes wide with panic. I can't deal with this right now, she said, her voice cracking. Not with my sister, and now this video. I gently took the phone from her hands and silenced it. You don't have to deal with anything right now, I said firmly. Let's just breathe, okay? Heather nodded, leaning into me. As I held her, I couldn't help but wonder how we'd navigate this storm. Our relationship, whatever it was, had just been thrust into the spotlight at the worst possible moment. With Heather's sister fighting for her life and her online persona under scrutiny, I knew we were standing on the edge of a precipice. As the sun began to rise, casting a soft glow through my apartment windows, I made a silent promise to myself and to Heather. Whatever came next, we'd face it together. Because despite all the complications, all the fear and uncertainty, one thing was crystal clear. My feelings for her were real, and I wasn't going to let go without a fight. The next few days were a whirlwind of hospital visits and damage control. Heather's sister showed signs of improvement, but the doctors remained cautiously optimistic. Meanwhile, the leaked video had spread like wildfire, forcing us to confront not only our feelings for each other, but also the court of public opinion. We need to address this, I said one evening, as we sat in my living room surrounded by empty takeout containers. The speculation is getting out of hand. Heather nodded, her eyes tired but determined. You're right, I think it's time to come clean about everything. We spent hours crafting a statement, agonizing over every word. It was dawn by the time we finished, both of us exhausted but somehow lighter. As Heather read over our final draft, I couldn't help but marvel at her strength. Even with everything going on, she was facing this head-on. Are you sure about this? I asked softly, giving her one last chance to back out. She reached out and took my hand, intertwining our fingers. I'm sure. No more hiding, Savannah. Not from the world, and not from ourselves. With a deep breath, she hit post. Our statement went live, a brutally honest account of our relationship, the reason behind the streaming channel, and a plea for understanding and privacy during this difficult time. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Messages flooded in, some supportive, some angry, some confused. But among the chaos, one message stood out. It was from Sarah. I owe you both an apology, it read. I let my feelings cloud my judgment. Your love story is beautiful, and I wish you nothing but happiness. If you need a friend or ally in all this, I'm here. Heather and I looked at each other in shock. Of all the reactions we'd expected, this wasn't one of them. Well, damn, Heather said, a small smile tugging at her lips. Didn't see that coming. I laughed, feeling some of the tension of the past few days finally start to ease. Maybe we've been underestimating people. As the day wore on, more messages of support poured in. The LGBTQ community rallied around us, praising our bravery and honesty. Even some of Heather's sponsors reached out, assuring us that they stood by her. It wasn't all positive, of course. We lost some followers, and there were plenty of hateful comments. But somehow, surrounded by the love and support of so many, those negative voices seemed less important. That evening, as we cuddled on my couch watching the sunset, Heather turned to me with a serious expression. Savannah, she said softly, I need to tell you something. My heart skipped a beat. What is it? she took a deep breath. I love you. I think I have since that first day at the climbing gym. I was just too scared to admit it. I felt tears prick at my eyes. Oh, Heather, I whispered, cupping her face in my hands. I love you too. So much. Our lips met in a kiss that was both familiar and thrillingly new. This time, there was no hesitation, no fear of what others might think. It was just us, finally honest with ourselves and the world. When we finally broke apart, Heather rested her forehead against mine. So what happens now? She asked. I smiled, running my fingers through her hair. Now, we face whatever comes next, together. The next morning, we headed to the hospital hand in hand. As we walked through the doors, I noticed people glancing our way, some with recognition in their eyes. But for once, I didn't care. I was proud to be by Heather's side, proud of our love and our story. Heather's sister was awake when we arrived, looking pale but alert. Her eyes widened as she took in our clasped hands. Well, it's about time, she croaked, a weak smile on her face. We laughed, the sound echoing in the small hospital room. It felt good to laugh, to feel joy even in the midst of all the uncertainty. As we settled in for our visit, Heather's phone buzzed. It was a message from one of her largest sponsors. My stomach clenched, fearing the worst. But as Heather read the message, her face broke into a wide grin. They want to do a special campaign, she said, her voice filled with excitement. Focused on LGBTQ athletes and overcoming adversity. They're calling it Climb with Pride. I felt a wave of emotion wash over me. After all the fear and worry, it seemed like things were finally starting to look up. See? I said, squeezing Heather's hand. I told you we'd get through this. She leaned in and kissed me softly, right there in the hospital room. We're just getting started, she murmured against my lips. As we sat there, surrounded by the beeping of hospital machines and the warm glow of new love, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. Whatever challenges lay ahead, I knew we'd face them together. Our climb wasn't over. In many ways, it was just beginning. But with Heather by my side, I was ready for any mountain life might throw our way. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of activity. As Heather's sister continued to recover, we threw ourselves into planning the charity climbing event. It was Sarah, surprisingly, who suggested the idea during one of our brainstorming sessions. Think about it, she'd said, her eyes sparkling with enthusiasm. We could raise awareness for LGBTQ issues and medical research at the same time. Plus, it's a great way to bring the community together. I had to admit, I was impressed. The woman I'd once seen as a rival had become one of our strongest allies. It was a testament to the power of honesty and open communication. The day of the event dawned bright and clear. Triangle Rock Club had generously offered their space, and climbers from all over the state had signed up to participate. Rainbow flags fluttered alongside climbing ropes, and the air buzzed with excitement. As I helped set up the registration table, I caught sight of Heather giving an interview to a local news station. She looked radiant, her blonde hair catching the sunlight as she spoke passionately about the cause. My heart swelled with pride and love. Earth to Savannah, Sarah's voice broke through my reverie. She was grinning at me, a knowing look in her eyes. You've got it bad, huh? I felt my cheeks flush. Is it that obvious? She laughed, patting my shoulder. Only to everyone with eyes. But it's cute. You two are good for each other. As the event kicked off, I was struck by the sense of community that filled the air. People of all ages and backgrounds came together, united by their love of climbing and their support for our cause. Even some of Heather's online followers had traveled from out of state to attend. Midway through the day, as I was taking a water break, I felt a tap on my shoulder. I turned to find an elderly woman smiling at me, her eyes twinkling behind thick glasses. I just wanted to thank you and your partner, she said, her voice wavering slightly with emotion. My granddaughter came out to me last year and I didn't handle it well, but seeing you two, so brave and open, it's helped me understand. I called her this morning to tell her I love her, no matter what. I felt tears prick at my eyes as I hugged the woman. It was moments like these that made all the challenges we'd faced worth it. As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the climbing walls, Heather took to the stage for the closing ceremony. I watched from the sidelines, my heart swelling with pride as she addressed the crowd. Today, she began, her voice strong and clear. We've not only raised an incredible amount for medical research and LGBTQ support services, But we've also shown the world the strength of our community. Each of you who climbed today, who donated, who showed up to support, you've helped us take one more step towards a more inclusive and understanding world. The crowd erupted in cheers, and I couldn't help but join in. As Heather's eyes found mine in the crowd, I saw all the love and gratitude I felt reflected back at me. After the ceremony, as we were packing up, Sarah approached us with a mischievous grin. "So," she said, "I may have a surprise for you two." She handed us an envelope. Inside was a gift certificate for a weekend getaway at a luxury climbing resort in the mountains. "Consider it a thank you for bringing me into this amazing community," Sarah said, waving off our protests, "and for showing me what real love looks like." That night, as Heather and I lay tangled together in my bed, exhausted but elated, I marveled at how much had changed in just a few short months. "Can you believe it?" Heather murmured, tracing lazy patterns on my skin. "If you hadn't given me that climbing tip all those weeks ago." I chuckled, pulling her closer. "Best advice I ever gave." She propped herself up on one elbow, her blue eyes serious as they met mine. "Savannah," she said softly, "I want you to know, no matter what happens with my streaming career or anything else, you're the most important thing in my life. You and this love we've found." I felt my heart swell almost to bursting. "Heather," I whispered, cupping her face in my hands, "you're my everything too. My partner, my love, my best friend." As we kissed, slow and deep and full of promise, I knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, we'd face them together. We'd built something beautiful, not just between us, but in the community we'd helped foster. Our climb wasn't over in many ways, it was just beginning. But with Heather by my side, I was ready for any mountain life might throw our way. As we drifted off to sleep, limbs intertwined and hearts beating in sync, I felt a profound sense of peace and excitement for the future. Tomorrow, we'd wake up and continue our journey. We'd support Heather's sister through her recovery, nurture our growing relationship, and keep working to make the world a little bit better. But for now, in this perfect moment, we simply held each other, grateful for the love we'd found and the community that had embraced us. As sleep finally claimed me, my last thought was of Heather's smile, bright and beautiful and full of promise. Whatever tomorrow brought, I knew we'd face it together, hand in hand, ready to climb any mountain that came our way. 2 years had passed since that first climb, since everything changed. Heather and I stood at the base of a challenging rock face, our hands intertwined, matching rings glinting in the morning sunlight. Who would have thought our first awkward climbing lesson would lead to this moment? Her sister was fully recovered now, working as a physical therapist and helping other cancer survivors. The Climb with Pride campaign had become a national movement, with Heather at its forefront. Our streaming channel had transformed from a desperate fundraising attempt to a platform for LGBTQ athletes and medical awareness. "Ready?" Heather asked, her blue eyes sparkling with that familiar combination of challenge and excitement. I laughed. "Always." The proposal had happened 6 months ago, right here at Triangle Rock Club. Sarah had been our unofficial wedding planner, her enthusiasm making up for her initial complicated feelings. Our wedding had been a celebration of love, community, and resilience. Climbers from across the country had attended, creating a day we'd never forget. As we began our ascent, I reflected on how far we'd come. The viral video that once terrified us had become a symbol of our journey. Sponsors who initially hesitated now fought to work with us. Our story had inspired countless others to embrace their truth, to climb their own metaphorical mountains. "Remember our first climb together?" Heather called down to me, her movements fluid and confident. "How could I forget?" I responded, carefully placing my hand on the next hold. "You were so stubborn, so determined." We moved in perfect synchronization, our bodies remembering the countless hours of practice, of supporting each other through every challenge. Our relationship had become more than just love. It was a partnership, a shared vision of what we could accomplish together. Halfway up the wall, Heather suddenly paused. "Look," she said softly, pointing to a small ledge where a family of rock wrens had nested. "Life, continuing its beautiful cycle right here among the stones." We took a moment to appreciate the view. The world spreading out beneath us. Mountains in the distance, forests stretching to the horizon, the climbing gym that had started it all small but significant in the landscape. As we reached the summit, the wind whipping around us, Heather pulled me close. "I love you," she whispered, "more today than yesterday, less than tomorrow." It was our private joke, a promise we'd made to each other, a commitment to growing, to loving more deeply with each passing moment. Our phones buzzed simultaneously, a message from Heather's sister. She was hosting a fundraiser for young cancer patients, using the model we'd developed. Another testament to how one small decision could create ripples of change. "We did it," I said, looking out over the landscape. "We actually did it." Heather kissed me then, soft and sure. No cameras, no audience, just us. The way we'd always been at our best, two people who found each other in the most unexpected way, who chose each other every single day. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in impossible shades of orange and pink, we began our descent. Another climb completed, another day of our extraordinary, ordinary life. We'd started as strangers in a climbing gym. We'd become partners, advocates, wives, and our story was still being written, one careful, determined step at a time. "Ready for the next adventure?" Heather asked, her hand finding mine. I squeezed her hand, my heart full. "Always." And we kept climbing.